Welcome to the Film Riot Podcast. I'm Ryan Conley, and as you know, there was no episode last week, and that's because we have a lot of projects going on all at once. A lot of cool stuff going on behind the scenes, especially with some film career type stuff that hopefully I'll be able to talk about soon. But because of all that, I've decided to switch the podcast to a bi-weekly podcast to alleviate some of that pressure and make sure that we have a consistent schedule going on so you guys know when the episode is going to be up. So from now on, every other week, we will have an episode out for you guys. We'll go back to weekly eventually. This is just for now so we can make sure we're doing everything at the quality that we want and in the time frame that we want. But today on the show, we have director and editor Avi Youabian. Avi has been an editor for years and years on massive properties like Frequency, The Walking Dead, Constantine, the Justin Bieber documentaries Believe and Never Say Never, and a ton more. He's also a director that has done shows like The Zoo, The Walking Dead, Red Machete miniseries, and a bunch more. Today we're talking about everything from how he got his start to how he works with directors as an editor and takes notes, the difference between television and film, and moving into directing. But before we get into that, I do want to thank our sponsors. And our first sponsor is Soundly. Soundly is software that can organize your sounds and help you preview them and bring them into your editor right from the software. We've talked about it on the show. I did a whole review of it there that you can check out on the episode page for this episode. But basically, you can either get the free version where you can use local sounds that you already own, or you can do a monthly subscription, which is what I do, and get thousands and thousands of sounds that they're always updating. So you can pretty much search any sound that you could possibly need for your scene, and they're going to have a version of it in there. But I've just really been loving it. Plus, they're giving you 10 days completely free for the first version. You don't have to register your payment information at all. Just download the app and sign up with the promo code FilmRiot, which is case sensitive. It's FilmRiot, all lowercase, no space. And our other sponsor is MusicBed, who just launched their subscription option membership. For the first time, you can get unlimited access to hundreds of emerging indie artists and leading composers in subscription format, all cleared for YouTube. And with a membership for every type of filmmaker using great music in your films And with the membership, they've made it really simple for filmmakers to use really great music in your projects. You can learn more at musicbed.com/membership. And also, we just collaborated with them on this release, and we did a whole episode where there's, tanks versus 6-foot teddy bears. So definitely check that out on our channel as well. There's flamethrowers and all kinds of other madness like gas bombs and grenades and whatnot. So jump over to youtube.com/filmriot and check out that episode. But now I'm going to shut up and get into it with Avi. All right, so you are an editor and now also director, and I want to talk about both of those things, but I just want to start with how you got into the industry to begin with. Did you go to film school?
I did. Went to USC, which was a great school, great program. Made a bunch of friends who I work with to this day, and I'm happy I went there. Let's just say I'm very happy I decided to go to film school. I had a lot of people tell me, you might not need to go to film school, just go out there and do it. And I think there's a little bit of truth to that, but I'm glad that I went to film school, again, because of the relationships that came out of the program.
So those relationships have really helped push your career along then?
Absolutely, yeah. There are people that I worked with in my first year at SC that I collaborate with to this day. Writers, DPs, you name it.
Was your main focus editing while you were there? Did you know for sure, that's what I wanted to do? I wanted to edit, or you knew you just wanted to be in film and you were finding it?
When I was in high school, someone had told me very early on, if you want to break into the industry, you should intern. So the long answer to your question is I started interning and I just fell into post before I got accepted to film school. And because I had a strong background in post, once I went to SC, I just gravitated towards it. I knew the Avid, and I took the opportunity to just work on every student film that I could. And if somebody was making a really cool high-end graduate thesis film, I'd approach them and go, hey, you want me to cut your musical, your thriller, your drama? I'd love to do it. And I know the Avid. That was enough for them to be like, wow, you know the Avid, and you're willing to do it for free? Fantastic. So it was just my way of networking, though. It was my way of going, all right, I want to make connections here. This is why I'm here. And also I want to build an editor's reel. Why not? And so I just started cutting any and all projects that could come my way. And on the side, I would cut actors' reels. Again, I had an Avid at home. So if I knew an actor who needed a reel put together, I would just do it. I would charge them, I don't know, like maybe $50 or something just to like make some extra cash on the side.
Yeah.
But it was all in the spirit of, all right, how can I just keep moving forward? How can I just keep making connections and learning?
Sure. Connections and experience.
Yeah, exactly. And it was great. And by the way, like I made a million mistakes while I was cutting all those shorts, and I learned from those mistakes. And I wasn't under the microscope of like a big client, a big network or studio. You know, I was cutting in my parents' garage on a laptop. It was fantastic.
Yeah. And then after film school, then what? What was your first gig?
So I graduated in 2002. And around that time, reality TV was really dominating the TV landscape, and there was a big demand for editors. So I remember graduating on a Friday, and I believe on that Monday, I was cutting on some reality show for NBC. And it was the gig that just helped me pay the bills and continue to work as a filmmaker, quote unquote, filmmaker in the industry. I was like, all right, I have a job.
Right.
And it was fantastic. I got out of school and I was an editor. And I did that for a good chunk of time. And that led to some other documentary work. And I remember landing at Lucasfilm through a friend of mine who was cutting a documentary on episode 3. It was essentially like a behind the scenes EPK on how episode 3 was coming about. By the way, this is one of my buddies from film school. He was cutting over there for about 2 years. They needed some help. He gave me a call. I said, absolutely. Are you kidding? I'd love to come to Lucasfilm and cut on anything, anything Star Wars.
It was a little bit of a no-brainer.
Yeah. It was fantastic. That, you know, they flew me out to Big Rock, and you know, I got to tour the entire complex over there, and I stayed at the inn. I don't know if you or your listeners are familiar with the fact that there is like a little inn/motel at the Lucas Ranch. It's amazing. It's fantastic, but you're so isolated from the rest of the world. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent. So I went over there and I cut this little documentary, and at the same time, there was a director who I knew who was shooting a pilot in San Francisco. So while I was there, I like reached out to him and I said, hey, can I come hang out? I want to come check out what you're doing on set. He was doing this big ABC pilot. And I went to the set. I pretty much said, man, you know, I'm doing this thing at Lucasfilm, which is really cool, but, you know, I've always wanted to cut scripted. How can I get in the door with the people over at Warner Brothers? Can you introduce me to one of your producers? And I think during the pilot, he made some minor introductions that eventually led to them hiring me on my first episodic TV show.
What show is that?
It was called The Evidence for ABC. It was a Warner Brothers produced show starring Orlando Jones and Rob Estes. It was a production by John Wells, who at the time was producing ER, The West Wing, and I think he was just wrapping up Third Watch. So he was like this prolific producer.
Couple small shows.
Yeah, a couple small shows. No, he was
no
like,
big deal.
You know, he was at the top of his game. He was up there with Bruckheimer and a slew of other great prolific producers. And they took a chance on me. Truth be told, it wasn't like an easy gig to get. I had to meet a bunch of people at Warner Brothers. A lot of people needed to vet me. They ultimately hired me because of my relationship with the pilot director, and they saw my credits. And actually, I'll go back to the story of like cutting those short films. One of the many short films that I cut at SC had gone on to win an Academy Award in the short film category. So when I met the producers at Warner Brothers and John Wells camp,
not bad
no,
to have on the resume.
It was a really cool short comedy that people around town and Hollywood had seen or at least heard of. So I'm in the room with the producers at Warner Brothers. They were like, listen, you've cut a bunch of reality TV. What have you done that's scripted? We just, you know, we're hiring scripted editors. And all I had was this short film. And actually, I had a bunch of short films, but I was like, check this one out. It won an Academy Award. They ultimately said, okay, we'll give you a shot on one episode, and then let's reassess after that one episode. Essentially saying, we're going to take a break on you, but we want to have it out. We want to be able to fire you after one episode.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, all right, cool. Fantastic. I'll take it.
Just to pause you there and going back, because I'm curious, you cut all these short films while you were in film school, and you cut this one that went on to win an Academy Award. Were you able to tell the difference, even just in the script of it, between these, of like, hey, this one's special? Or were you like, wow, I'm surprised that...
So yes. All right. So I'm going to plug the short film now. The short was called The West Bank Story. This is called West Bank Story. It was one of those things I read, and it was very topical at the time. There was a lot of chaos in the Middle East, and this was a spoof of that, a comedy, color commentary on what was going on in the Middle East. I read it. I met with the director. I knew that he was actually throwing money at this production. It wasn't going to be a cheap production. We had like a big choreographer attached and a big, nice cast, and it was going to be a lengthy shoot. And I approached him, said, I want to cut this thing. I have a laptop and an Avid. I'll do it for you for free. And I made a deal with him. I said, I know that this will eventually get into Sundance. And when it does, my only form of payment will be plain room and board at Sundance. And the guy laughed at me. He's like, you got a deal. Great. So we get to Sundance.
Sucker.
He has to fly me out and put me up, which is fantastic. And then the movie ended up screening at over 100 different little baby festivals around the world, which was fantastic. We never thought the film would get that far. Cut to a phone call from the director. He's like, you're not going to believe this, but I think we're going to get nominated for an Academy Award. I was like, you're kidding me. He's like, no, I think there's a chance because of X, Y, and Z, the rules. And, there's all these like stipulations of how you get nominated and how you qualify.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the short film wins the Academy Award, and I was able to sort of like use that to get in the door. Actually, that was it. I just needed to get in the door at Warner Brothers. And once I got in and I, worked really hard, I got to say, like I worked 14-hour days every single day, sometimes 16 hours, just to make sure that like the first impression was going to be a keeper. So people go, okay, let's keep him around and give him more episodes. That led to another series right after The Evidence. Evidence lasted for a season. They took it off the air, but John Wells was doing another show right after that and invited me to stay on. It was a series called Smith with Ray Liotta, and that was a big deal at the time because Ray Liotta hadn't done television before. So I did that, and that lasted less than a season. I think it got canceled after 7 episodes, but I had made a dent, and then now I had this like badge of honor of like, oh, Avi has worked with John Wells at Warner Brothers. So that opened the door to a series called Cold Case that Bruckheimer TV was producing on the lot. And, once you're in and you've made a few good impressions, word travels fast. And the same goes for, if you don't do a good job, people don't hire you.
Blackballed.
You don't really get blackballed, but like when your name comes up, I've heard people say, well, all right, that who else are you meeting? That's one way of saying, well, I don't know if I'd vote. I'd give 100% vote of confidence to this one character. Like, all right, cool. Yeah, that editor is great. But who else are you meeting? It's a really nice, polite way of saying,
I'd rather not.
Show me your entire roster before I give this person a thumbs up.
Yeah. To go back with your first in with WB, you were saying that you had to do a lot of meetings to get that first gig. What's a meeting like that like as an editor? Because I mean, it's not like you're sitting there editing for them. Is there a way of pitching yourself to them? Like what happens in those meetings?
Well, that's a really good question. I think whether you're editing, directing, producing, production design, boom operating, people want to meet with you just to make sure you're a cool person they want to work with. As an editor, you're in a room with somebody, you're going to have a point of view, you're going to have thoughts, and you want to be able to just sort of articulate yourself. And they just want to hear you out. They just want to know what your story is, where you came from, how you started in the business, why you want to work on any specific project, that enthusiasm that you hopefully bring to the table. That's what they want. They don't want to know, tell me about your editing procedure, or like how do you tackle They don't ask you how you tackle the footage. Like their process or your process should not be the same, and they don't care about that at all. They really want to know if you're somebody they want to work with. That's really what it comes down to. Or an
a-hole.
So they want to make sure you're not an a-hole or you're too cocky or confident to the point where you're not going to take their notes if you're going to push back. And they'll have secret questions they have in the meeting where they'll just say, hey, tell me how you tackle a sequence that maybe needs to be cross-cut. They'll want you to talk about your process, but really they want to hear you talk about the process.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it does. I like to dumb it down. It's like, yeah, they want to make sure you're not an a-hole. You're not going to give them a hard time, because once they hire you, it's going to be hard to get rid of you. And it'll cost them money because they've wasted money on hiring someone to the show that could possibly have destroyed the footage and the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just to jump back, after Cold Case, then what? When did because eventually you got onto Walking Dead.
Yes. Years later, I met a writer who was on a series called Flash Forward. His name is Scott Gimple. Scott Gimple later was writing/producing on The Walking Dead. I ran into him at a party, and he said, hey, I'm going to be taking over season 4, I believe. Would you like to join the party? I was like, absolutely. And prior to that meeting with Scott, I had gone off and just directed a web series on my own. It was essentially maybe 8 or 9 years into cutting scripted TV, and I just wanted to shoot something, go out and direct, just to have a real piece. And I met up with one of the first actors I met in the business, Orlando, from my first series, and we just did this thing called Tainted Love, and we put it out on YouTube through a company called Machinima. They licensed it and streamed it. It was really cool. And we just left it there. It was on the internet. It was cool. It was a good, fun, real piece.
Did that deal with Machinima happen before you shot or after?
After. We shot it, and then we took it to various outlets and negotiated streaming deals. And it was really like, okay, who wants to put this on their platform for a licensing fee? And Machinima was the one who was the only company who came to us and said, we'll pay you a fee and we don't want to own any of the IP, which is why we ultimately went with them. It was fantastic. They also had a great subscriber base or subscriber count. I don't know what
definitely.
I don't know what the term is, Ryan. You're gonna have to help me there. But whatever that is,
either one of those is
bunch
acceptable.
Of people who were gonna get a notification in their inbox when the video is posted.
People will see it.
Yeah. The web series was cool. It was this little short piece we did with Orlando Jones. Eric Roberts was in it. Maz Jobrani, who was one of my favorite comics, was in it. Deanna Russo, and I'm spacing on another actor. I can't believe I'm forgetting. Anyway, it was a cool little low-budget thing we went out and shot. Web series. It was named like one of the top 10 web series of that year, which was awesome. Variety gave it that little accolade. And then I forgot about it. Left it on the shelf. Scott, who had seen the web series, ultimately, gave me my opportunity on The Walking Dead. After working there for a little bit, he said, hey, I'm going to give you a slot. And by the way, it wasn't an easy get. I had to go and fight and say, I really want one of those chairs. If you guys trust me as an editor, can I get the opportunity? And they supported me, which was fantastic. It was like my break into scripted series, episodic directing.
That's great. And then with getting one of those editing chairs, saying you had to fight to get that, or were you talking about directing an episode?
I meant directing. The directing.
Oh, okay.
I.
So Tainted Love is what really helped you get a spot directing one of the episodes then.
Yes, because Scott had seen it, and I believe he shared it with some people at AMC, and they were like, okay, well, this guy's serious. He wants to direct. He's not just somebody who's asking for it. He's actually spent some time and energy and his own money into something like this product, and he's worked with actors before. It was nice having Eric Roberts and Orlando and those actors in this web series. It gave it a little bit of production value, and it showed them that I could work with actors on set.
Yeah. So to get that, to fight for it, were you pitching? Did you have to like pitch takes on things like you would with a film? Like how much different is that with a film than it is with TV? Because the TV world, I know nothing.
All right. So in the TV world, you don't really have to pitch for an episode. That's not how it works. What happened was I needed to tell them that I was interested, and I campaigned really hard to get the opportunity. Now, there are tons of people who want those opportunities, whether it's The Walking Dead or any other show. Like people are available, and they are more talented, and they have more credits than I. But I was an asset to the show. As an editor, I was there for a while, and I said, hey, I really would love this opportunity. I know the show really well. Will you consider giving me a chair? And, a lot of backdoor meetings happened before I got the thumbs up. It wasn't as simple like, yes, we'll give you one. A lot of people on the studio side and the network side have to get a bunch of director lists together, approve them, figure out their dates, And I can tell you exactly what happened behind the scenes, but they said, all right, we'd love to have you, and we'll give you a directing chair if you come back for another season as an editor. I was like, hoorah! I celebrated.
Deal.
I was like celebrating. All right, this is awesome. And so, before that had happened, there was actually like season 4 or 5. I remember we had a little bit of downtime for post, and I flew myself out to Atlanta and I just shadowed a director just to start like meeting the crew on set. Because I live in LA and the production takes place in Georgia.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just meet the crew and the cast and see how they work. The truth is I had visited a few sets here and there over the years, but not in a shadowing department where I would just physically be there every day with a director watching every move he or she made before production.
A little bit of a crash course sort of thing.
Yeah, it was a really cool crash course, and it was nice to meet a bunch of the crew members who worked on the show that I would never interact with. And in between setups or lighting changes, I would ask questions of the actors and go, tell me about your experience on episode 6 last year. How did you guys do that one thing with the blocking or the staging or that stunt? It was in itself a film school.
Yeah, and the best kind.
And the best kind, because you're there and they'll tell you exactly how they do it.
Yeah, the active functioning reality.
And every TV show is a different beast. The way The Walking Dead does their series and the way they produce their content is different than, I'll point to Zoo, which was another show I directed last year for CBS. That had a different pace. It was shot digitally versus The Walking Dead that's shot on film. The schedule's even more accelerated than the way The Walking Dead is shot. So every show is like its own beast, a little mini movie. And the big difference between directing television versus a feature is that you're a guest. You really go into somebody else's sandbox for every episode, and you have a DP, an AD, a line producer, and a showrunner who knows the show better than any guest director that can come on set. So you really rely on them and lean into them, and hopefully they support you in making a great show. You bring a point of view to a script, but again, you're always sort of leaning into someone like the DP going, listen, I'm thinking about shooting the sequence handheld. Is that something you guys have done? And sometimes the DP will go, we don't want to do handheld here because of X, Y, and Z. I'm working on a show now, and we have a hard and fast rule about no handheld. We just are staying away from it for various reasons that I won't bore you with. It's just a rule. Whereas a show like Friday Night Lights was always handheld. Like if you walked on that show and tried to get on a very pretty crane, people would look at you and go, what do you, no, that's not what we're doing here. That's not the show. That's not the DNA of the story we're telling.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So jumping, because you've done an episode of a few different TV shows, and you jump into Walking Dead, which you kind of had, you're in the Walking Dead family already and you shadowed, which helped you. But then you jump into something like Zoo or one of the other shows that you have directed. How long do you get to kind of prep and to get into, since it's so different, like to get up to speed with how they're doing things? How long do you have to get in there, or is it just jumping right into the deep end?
So if you get the job on any TV show, every director can do their prep differently. My process is to watch every single episode of that series, to just binge watch any and all episodes available at the time. So I can watch the way they cut the show. I learn about the standing sets they have on any given episode. I can watch where they've kind of move their cameras, and I actually learn about floating walls on those sets. And I just make a bunch of notes and take a lot of screenshots on my laptop. So I immerse myself in that world. That's my process. Just learn about that world so that when I'm on set and someone says something about a character, or if I read something about a script, I will have known that world from A to Z. And the actors will trust me more to go, oh, this guy actually knows my character. That's the way I prep for a show. Now, once you actually get your script for your particular episode, you read it, you hopefully take a bunch of notes or have notes or questions for the showrunner or the producer on set. And you have 8 days of prepping, which is, well, it's anyway, actually, again, every show is a little different, but you have about 7 or 8 days where you go out and you look at locations, and you have tone meetings and concept meetings and production meetings and maybe prop meetings if you're, again, on a show that is heavy with props and guns. But you have that time to prep while you're there, but it's really just to concentrate on your episode. It's not about learning about how the world was built. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then 7 or 8 days, that's pretty fast, especially with like an hour long show.
Yeah. It's pretty accelerated. But again, you're saying hour long when the typical show is about 42 to 50 minutes with commercials. And, you get commercial breaks. So let's just say 42-minute short film.
Yeah.
And then you direct your episode, which could be anywhere from 7 to 9 days. I know there are certain series that actually shoot up to 12. On the network side, I hear Game of Thrones shoots like, I don't know, 15 days or something per episode. It's like some insane.
Oh, wow.
Don't quote me on that, but I know that they have like all the time in the world and a lot of money per episode.
I mean, given how complicated it often is, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I haven't played in that sandbox. Hopefully I will one day to be able to play on something of that scale. But I just remember hearing David Nutter, who's a director on that series. He just says every element is just so huge and it takes time to move, horses, for example. So just to move the horses, it takes forever to turn the cameras around. And then having to move an army, whatever that is.
Imagine that reset's not pleasurable. So you're talking about once you get the script and everything, and you mentioned notes. So are you able to actually affect the script for the episode, or is it like you're handed a script and this is what the episode's going to be? Or, like, how close to traditional film is that, or is it very, very different?
Okay, so every show is different. Certain shows will welcome notes from a director. I think a majority of the shows will welcome notes from a director. But television is a writer's medium. A lot of people have said that, and it's true. Like, you are there to service the writer of the show and the producers of that show. It doesn't mean you can't bring your point of view to the table. In my experience on, I'll say on Zoo, or that Tom Clancy film that we did together, that was a very open conversation about what the story needed to be. Zoo was great in that I was able to read the script and go, hey, we have these 2-3 scenes where these characters are pretty much just standing and talking. Can we cross-cut them? Or I'd really like to try an approach with the end where we put in like a song under these 4 or 5 sequences of an event, just tie them together with a track. And they responded really well to that. They loved it. They're like, oh, cool, yeah, let's do that. How do we enhance this? I guess that's what it is. It's like, how do you enhance the script? You can't go in there and go, well, thank you for the script. I'm going to rewrite it now because I'm the director. That's not how it works. It just doesn't work that way in television. There are people who have been working on the story for months in concept form with the studio and the network, in an outline form. And again, they're playing a longer game. Your episode is just like a pebble.
Yeah.
It's part of a bigger mosaic. So if you're contributing, you have to also be asking a lot of respectful questions about how does this tie into future episodes, or why are we doing X, Y, and Z? And usually they'll have an answer for you. And
Sure.
You go, cool, I was thinking about shooting it this way. And 9 times out of 10, they'll say, that's great, do that. That'll actually be helpful. And hopefully they've given you a bit of information from future episodes or past episodes, and you're able to enhance it.
Yeah, and given that it is, like you're saying, it's a writer's medium, and you have the the showrunner on there who is really like the lord over the show itself. As a director on a television, I'm just really interested in this because I don't know the TV world at all. On a television show versus a film, like with a film, you're executing on, as the director, your vision, and everybody's there to service your vision. On a TV show, is that very much different? Does it feel more like you're executing on the vision of the show, which comes from the writer and showrunner, and you're there to bring that vision to reality, less so than it being your specific vision?
I think that's exactly what it is, bringing their vision to reality, but also throwing putting your icing on the cake.
Yeah.
That's TV in a nutshell. Now, listen, not every show is the same way. I can't say that. Like, there are certain shows that you'll walk into, and the showrunner will go, listen, these are the characters. They're in this space, and we need to create a lot of tension and dread. And that's all you get. And it's your job to come in as a director and enhance that and really build that out and go, okay, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just using an example. I'll use a lot of shallow depth of field coverage to compress the space. And I'll have moody lighting here. And I'll talk to the DP about that and go, hey, how could we effectively do this in the time that we're allowed to do it in? And then once you get into post, you're working with your editor and you're maybe throwing music ideas or score ideas from your library at them. But it is, remember, it's you know this better than anybody. It's a big collaboration. So everyone's hearing those notes from the showrunner. It's not just the director that comes in and hears those notes. It's everybody in those concept meetings, from the production designer to the DP to the AD to the editors who listen in on tone meetings. Everyone's trying to work towards one common goal.
I'm going to pause there and once again thank our sponsor, Soundly. Like I said, Soundly is software for you to be able to control your sound way better than you have before. This was shown to me by my editor of Ballistic, and it just blew my mind. I was so angry that I didn't know that this had existed before, because bringing all the sounds into your editor and trying to organize them there and preview them there and find the right one inside of software that's not really meant to do that way was just really frustrating. But with Soundly, it makes it super simple. It's all organized right there for you. You can search through all your sounds, find the ones that you need, select just the piece of the clip that you want, and bring that right in. I've reconstructed sound from the ground up just using Soundly. Actually, I'm about to do it with the new sketch that we're working on for Film Riot as well. So it's a really easy way to work with sound. But again, you don't need to spend any money to try it out. They're giving you 10 days completely free. You don't have to register any payment information or anything. Just download the app and sign up with the promo code FilmRiot, all lowercase, no space, and you can get those 10 days free to try it out. And I think if you do, you're definitely going to buy it. This is easily one of my favorite things that I've discovered in a very long time. But now, again, I will shut up and get back into it with Avi. I want to jump into editing with you've done a lot of editing, like we covered already, specifically with Walking Dead, some of my favorite episodes even. It's interesting because you're on The Walking Dead, but it's like it's a team of you, and you'll get a specific episode while somebody else is cutting an episode, right? Is that how it's working?
Yes, every editor is assigned an episode, just like a director. And on a typical TV show, there are 3 editors, and they just rotate.
And then how long do you have to cut an episode?
So let's say production shoots for 8 days. You will be cutting side by side along those 8 days. On day 1, on day 2, you're getting the dailies from day 1's production.
Right.
And you'll cut for those 8 days. Typically, you'll get anywhere from 2 to 4 days after those production days to assemble the entire product on your own. You know what I mean? So you'll have that time to assemble all those little scenes you've assembled. You'll look at it as a big string out.
So that's your editor's cut?
Yes, it would be your editor's cut. Then the director is invited in. On the TV side, they'll get 4 days per DGA rules, and they'll tweak and massage that. Then it goes to the showrunners, producers, and they'll spend, they can spend as much time as they really need. It's their ship. They'll spend anywhere from 5 to 6 days on it. If the director's cut is really healthy and if it's not too long or too short, they might spend 2 days on it. Then they'll send that to the studio. The studio, I'll just use the example of Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers will look at the cut and go, great, we're really happy with the cut. Here are a couple notes we have. We'll address those. Then we'll send it to the network. The network will look at it, give 1 round of notes. We'll address their notes, send it back to them, and that would be the proposed locked cut. And hopefully they'll sign off, unless they have maybe a minor tweak here or there. They'll lock the show, and then you sit there with your sound team and your composer, and you spot it. And if you have a visual effects heavy show, you'll bring those guys in a separate meeting. We'll do a visual effects spot. In the case of Walking Dead, we had 2-3 hour visual effects meetings sometimes because we were going through a lot of hidden visual effects that people wouldn't see, just like hiding some of the seams in the storytelling or painting out birds in the background or buildings or scene extensions, whatever it was. And then, by the way, as an editor, by the time you're doing these visual effects meetings and spots and composer meetings, you're already getting dailies on your next episode. So
Wow.
It's common to be juggling, the finishing duties on one episode while you're starting your next one.
Yeah. And what's your function in those spotting meetings with the score and the VFX and all that?
In my experience, I try to drive the visual effects and music spotting meetings as much as I can, because I've actually lived with a cut more than anybody else on the show, and I've also listened to a lot of the notes from the showrunner, whether it be from picture or music or the emotion they want to get out of the scene. And I do that because sometimes the showrunner might not be able to actually attend the spot. So I'll take the charge and go, okay, here's what our showrunner was thinking for this scene. The temp that I've thrown in there, the temp cue that I've put in there, is not there yet. And he wanted me to relay that. Can we beat this? The composer will go, oh, okay, well, what were you hoping to achieve emotionally What were we trying to get the audience to feel at this point? We'll talk about that, and then they'll go off, they'll take a pass, and they'll send their cue to post-production, and hopefully the showrunner will review it, give them notes before we get to a mix stage. At that point, the post-producer who is running the post division and oversees the 3 editors on the show will be giving notes to the composer and the sound designers or whoever who are submitting content for review. The editors will have handed it off to the post supervisor because we're on dailies for our next episode at that time.
Yeah. It's just a whole world of notes, just notes everywhere.
Yes, a lot of people are commenting on your cuts. It's just the nature of the beast of television.
How do you navigate that?
But here's the thing, listen, a showrunner is the gatekeeper. At the end of the day, you don't have to service every single note. There's times where you get a bunch of great notes, and sometimes you get a few notes where you go, okay, that doesn't work. And I always, my assistant editor, who I love, and he's very much in the room with me, and I'm always trying to train him. And the one thing I tell him is, don't ever not do a note because it doesn't work. Listen to the note. If there's a note here, maybe it's just bumping people. They might not be able to communicate what it is. Do the spirit of the note. What are they really asking you to do? It's not necessarily about music. Sometimes they're saying the scene doesn't work, and they don't know how to articulate themselves to say that. They're giving you a roundabout note by saying, could we have a specific line on camera? Because we want to hear that actor. The truth is, you can hear that actor. You know who's saying it. The reason we cut away from that character or the actors maybe for performance sake. We want to protect them and not show them in a close-up on camera. Or we may have, used 2 or 3 different takes, and we Frankensteined a line of dialogue from 2 or 3 different takes, and we had to play that off camera.
Right.
You can explain that to them and go, okay, we went with this approach. 9 times out of 10, they'll go, oh, that makes sense. Cool. So you don't have to service every single note.
What's an example of a bad note or specific types of bad notes that you get?
A type of bad note? I can't.
Yeah, for any director, pretty much I guess what I'm asking is for any director listening, including myself.
I don't know who's going to be listening to this. I have to be careful.
Yeah, what's some don't do this to your editors sorts of things?
Okay, well, let me go back. The first thing you shouldn't do to your editors, I think directors do this a lot. I don't know why. But they cut too early. I think there's a lot of magic that happens at the end of a scene, sometimes even the beginning. And I know that directors are on set, they're rushing to make their days. And
so you're saying physically cutting the cameras. They cut the cameras too early.
Physically, they're going, and cut. I can't tell you how many times I just wish they had let the actors live and breathe in the scene after the scene was over. So sometimes directors yell cut too early. Let your actors sit there for a minute. You'd be surprised what you can mine out of those few seconds at the end of a scene.
That's great.
As far as coming into a room, the first thing you do is maybe you watch your editor's cut. Always start with all the things that are working for you, give a lot of compliments, and then lead to, okay, here's what I don't think is working, and ask your editor why that isn't working for you. I would say your editor will usually go, oh, I see what's bumping you. I get it. And hopefully a good editor won't defend every note that is given to him or her, but instead says, okay, I'm looking at a wall in my office right now. I'm trying to give you a good example. Somebody will come in and go, okay, this is confusing. Why isn't this character introduced before we cut to, her previous scene, blah, blah, blah. I would say, well, editorially, we restructured these 3 scenes in Act 3, and it's throwing you off. What if we did this to service your note? And here's why I did X, Y, and Z, whatever that explanation would be. But instead of a director coming in and going, you know what, I think that scene is just not working. We're going to have to roll up our sleeves and get in there and work on it together. That really will shut your editor down in many ways. Like, going, I worked on this so hard. Let me tell you why I had this point of view after watching the dailies, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And I've worked with directors that have come in and they've done exactly that, where they're just like, okay, well, this scene's a mess. We're going to have to really dive in there together. And I'm thinking, all right, buddy, thanks. Thanks a lot.
Douchebag.
And you get into it and you're like, oh, you just didn't like the performances I selected for one of the actresses in the scene. I get it.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think one of the best directors that I've worked with would always come in and go, the scene's not working for me and it's either too slow or it's too fast. Will you take a pass and tighten it up for me? And I love that because you sort of empowered and you are a collaborator in many ways because they're saying, I'm not giving you the nitpicky notes. I'm just saying, here are the thoughts and go do them and give me your version of my filtered notes.
Yeah. And have you found a difference between television and feature film? Because you've cut both.
Television's just really accelerated, and I think there's a lot of great television out there. I want to preface that by saying in TV, specifically cable and network, there is the crutch of going to a commercial break. Sometimes if you don't have the right transition or you need to have a little hook or a break, you can restructure things to have them lean into an act break. In features, you have a 2-hour roller coaster ride. That's what it is. It's like a roller coaster ride that cannot stop. You have to make sure that your audience is engaged from beginning to end. And I gotta say, I love that about features because you are really having to step back further from the mosaic and look at the big picture when you're making those decisions. Whereas I think in TV, you have that crutch of going, all right, this doesn't work. This really doesn't work in Act 3. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull the B plot out of Act 3 and move it into 4, and I'll restructure a couple things in 4 just to balance the ebb and flow of the episode. Again, you're concentrating like certain zip codes of the episode, and you can get away with it with those cuts to commercials.
Right.
I think features are harder in a sense where you're going, all right, I have a 2-hour roller coaster ride, and I want to make sure nobody tunes in and wants to walk out of a theater.
Yeah. Are you reading the scripts for them? Like with the TV shows and the features, do you read the scripts before you dive in, or do you just like to see what's there with the footage and work with that?
No, I think you have to read a script on both projects. I don't think I've ever worked on any project where I haven't read the script first. You want to know what scenes you're getting just to make sure people are hitting their marks and, actors are achieving what was, reminiscent of what you read. I would say on a feature, I will read the script before meeting with the directors and the producers of that movie. I'll go in with my thoughts and notes on the script. I think that's one way to actually land the job on a feature, is to go in there with notes and say, here's what I would do with the script to enhance it. And how can I help you editorially? I will actually talk to them about how I would cut sequences or maybe even cross-cut sequences. That's always proven helpful in the room when people go, oh, that's a fresh take. We didn't think about that. And usually that actually gets them excited and go, wow, this guy's really thinking about how this is coming together. He's our guy. What was your other question? I spaced.
No, that was pretty much the question.
I think I answered.
Yeah.
I think I.
And then I'm just really interested in the comparisons of TV versus film. And is it really similar with how you're entering into the piece as a whole? As far as you have the footage, you're starting to dive into it. Are you looking at it scenes as a whole? I mean, with a television show and a feature film, is it a very different process for you or a very similar process?
It's incredibly similar. I don't look at them any differently or approach them any differently.
So it's like TV shows, just a little bit of a shorter movie.
Yeah. And sometimes they're even more rewarding because you're working on them for a short amount of time and they're done. You get to move on to your next project. And let's just say you get on a bad movie. Luckily, I haven't been on a bad movie. I'm knocking on it. You get on a bad movie and you're there for like a year and a half. It's tough, man. You're like, I can't work on this movie anymore. But you can't jump ship. If you get on a bad TV episode, you're done in a month and a half. You know what I mean? You're moving on. You got another one. Also, I think I heard a episodic TV director say this once, and he used to direct a lot of features back in the day. I said, hey, how come you're doing television? Like you could be doing a lot of movies. Why are you doing this? First of all, his response was, I love TV. I love having different episodic work every other month. 2, in TV, you get to strike out more often than you can on a feature. If you make a bad movie or a movie that doesn't gross a bunch of money at the box office, which is then considered a flop, you strike out and then you get benched. You go to director jail, which is a term used. You're like, oh man, his last 2-3 movies haven't made money. He's in jail now because he can't bring in box office.
Right.
In TV, you make an episode, there's a lot of opportunities in that if the ratings are low, it's fine. You get to go out there and strike again. No one's looking at your hits or misses based off of ratings. And I believe TV now is just like there's so much opportunity out there. There's so much content between Amazon and Hulu and Netflix and Crackle. I mean, like the list goes on and on. You got Warner Brothers that's just creating their own DC streaming platform.
Yeah. And it's all just incredible quality stuff, too.
Yes, and the quality is no different. I'll point to Better Call Saul. There was an episode I saw the other day where I was just blown away by the production value of the episode and thinking, wow, a lot of movies don't have the balls to actually do what that show does today. There's a series on Starz that I started watching not too long ago. It's called Counterpart, and it's just as good, if not better, than most movies that are out there today. J.K. Simmons stars in it. It's so well crafted. The world building is insane. I'm obsessed with that show. In fact, more people need to be watching that show.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of our like original, unique stuff in TV.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And again, opportunity. Just go out there and play in this funny business we call entertainment. People actually pay us to actually do this. It's hilarious. But being able to go out and work in television and make little movies or mini movies like you mentioned, it's fantastic.
So what's next for you? You're kind of concentrating on your directing career. You're still juggling both the editing career and the directing career?
Good question. I'm doing both. I'm still transitioning into that director, or I should say full-time director phase. I'm editing a series right now. It's called All American for Warner Brothers and CW. It stars Taye Diggs. It's actually really cool. You should check it out. I'll be editing that for a little bit. And then later this year, I have 3 episodic directing assignments. And then without jinxing it, I'm pitching a movie, a low-budget film that I hope to be shooting in, again, I'm not going to jinx it, but hopefully early next year.
How does something like that come about for you? Was that like a script that you found or was brought to you and then you developed? Or?
It was something that I have been developing with a writer. And again, it's...
Okay, so it's something that you were involved with the inception of.
Correct. This is something that I wanted to make. Met a writer who had like a kernel of an idea, and I sort of jumped on that and said, okay, well, what if we do X and Z? And I think there's a window how to make this with a very small budget. So we have pitched it, and we, again, I don't want to jinx it because it might go away. That usually happens when you talk about this. And again, it's a low budget movie that I want to try to get off the ground.
Yeah, and not even specifically that one, just pitching in general. How does pitching a feature go for you? Are you going in there with a writer?
I think everyone's different. In this case, I was in a meeting with someone and I said, hey, I'm directing now. You call me up for a lot of editing assignments, but I'm directing now. And he's like, oh, cool. I said, I have something that kind of fits your company's brand. I'd love to tell you a little bit about it. I gave him a little quick pitch in the room, and I got a thumbs up, like, oh yeah, we'd make that.
Oh, I think I know who you're talking. I'm going to ask you offline. I have a guess.
And I essentially just gave him a tease of what the project and what the movie's about.
Yeah.
And since that initial meeting, I've put together a sizzle reel, which is a highlight reel of what the movie's tonally looks like, feels like, sounds like, and a bunch of visual boards, like a deck that you can leave with people and go, okay, this is the film. This is essentially the film, the visual guide or the visual Bible that connects to the script. And I think that's the way a lot of people go in there and pitch. I know there are certain writers that walk into a room and they sell an idea off of a one-liner. And if you have enough clout, you can do that. If you have enough experience and connections, you can make that happen. I'm not there yet. Eventually, hopefully, I will get there. But it's really tough to be in that top echelon where you're the J.J. Abrams of the world, where you walk into Paramount and say, I have your next X franchise. And they're like,
just give me money and trust me. I'll be back with more money.
And usually they're like, here, just take our money. Go make it.
Here, all the money, go.
I mean, but it's a process. You have to sort of start and make those relationships, find those relationships that lead to other opportunities, and hopefully you're doing good work. People recognize that, and you're not quote unquote an a-hole. and they go, hey, I want to make a movie with this guy.
Yeah, definitely, man. You hear that all the time, even at, the lower levels of just making a short film. It's, anybody that's going to be on my set, I'm like calling around, hey, have you worked with them? Are they a douche? Or, so it's, it's nice to hear that goes all the way up the chain.
Yeah.
I try to keep it as least douchebag percentage as possible.
I would say, listen, JJ is one of my favorite filmmakers now. And I think JJ has that policy of Bad Robot. He doesn't want to work with assholes.
Yeah.
As long as you're cool and fun and you're there and you respect the fact that you have a great opportunity to be working in this industry and you're just telling stories, why wouldn't they want to hire you? Why wouldn't they want to keep you around?
Definitely. Well, I know you have places to be, and we went a little bit over the time that you had allotted. So I'm going to just close with, what's one tip for an editor and one tip for a director, maybe something that you've learned recently or is just like a no-brainer that people should just know when starting out, or anything in that range?
A no-brainer. All right, I think we covered a lot of it, but I would say be open to ideas. Notes for editors. I would say no matter what note you get, you should first try it, because then you can show it to a client or a director or producer, whoever it is, and just say, this is what it looks like. And if you disagree with it, you have at least showed them that you have respected the idea of the note or the thought of the note, and you've executed it, and then they'll hear you out. If you defend it immediately by saying, no, that's not going to work, I've tried it, it's not going to work because of these reasons, you're going to disrespect your director or producer, whoever. So always do the note and then respond with why you don't agree with it.
Yeah,
as far as
great.
Directors go, I would say give notes to your editors first for the first pass, and then walk away from the cut. Give them a bunch of notes from top to bottom, and then just step away from it. Give them time to marinate and see it from your point of view, instead of being in the room executing every single note. I think a lot of editors will surprise you, because they'll go, oh, I know what he's looking for here and here. Oh, maybe I can enhance this other scene that he hasn't even talked about.
Yeah.
If you sort of stay in the room and maybe hover over the editor, that might not be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I haven't cut for a lot of people, but I did cut for you as my director. And I always really loved and appreciated the fact that you'd be like, here are the things that aren't really working for me. Go surprise me. And I'd be like, okay.
Yeah. I remember saying
like,
that to you.
do something surprising. Go.
I remember saying that to you. Like, what do you mean surprise you?
And the first time you said it, I'm like, that's not a note. What am I supposed to do with that? But then I was like, I went and I started messing with the footage, and I was like, oh, this is it just gives so much license.
Well, to give kudos to you, I mean, listen, I followed your career from Film Riot, and I trusted you as a filmmaker, not just an editor or director, but I just trust you as a filmmaker. And
thanks, man.
I knew that I wanted to just let you surprise me in a positive way. I knew that whatever you would come up with would be a improvement on whatever it was, instead of me saying, it needs 6 frames here or 12 frames there, and let's add a cut there. That's not really that's not collaborative. I actually
crossfades. I want crossfades between every shot.
Yeah. I'm like, I need a lot more star wipes. There's no star wipes, right?
I'm sorry, sir. More star wipes flying in.
And by the way, like, I have to give you credit. Like, that opening for the Tom Clancy film was something you came up with entirely on your own. I didn't give you any note on that other than make it really cool and messy. I think that was the word. I was like, it just needs to be a messy introduction. And you took it.
Yeah.
To
I was just like, messy I can do.
I would have never dreamed of doing what you ended up doing with the coverage. And by the way, I take credit for everything. So thank you for that.
Hey, you're welcome. Happy to help. Yeah, no, that's one of the things I took away from that project the most, is just the level of collaboration that you brought to it is something that influenced me, and I've taken forward with every project I've done since, is that idea of surprise me. Here's the vision. You know what I'm going for. Now surprise me.
Awesome.
I think it works so great.
You got to bring me something, and I have to cut something for you now, so that we can do the.
I'm in.
Show. I would love that.
I'm
not kidding. I would love that.
That'd be great.
Cool, man. Well, thank you for this. This has been a treat.
No, absolutely. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Sorry we went over. And now I'm going to stop recording so I can see if I'm right about who you were talking to.
All right.
So that's it for today. And if you want to connect with Avi online, go to filmriot.com/podcast and jump over to the episode page for this episode, and you can find links for him there. You'll also find all the links for our sponsors for this episode, including the review for Soundly and the episode we did with MusicBed for their launch. You can find me online at twitter.com/Ryan_Conley. And until next time, don't forget to write, shoot, edit, repeat.